I'm a big fan of Skylanders, if you can't tell.
Like a really big fan of Skylanders.
I'm also a pretty big fan of Japan. I like their cars, I like their shows, their music is pretty good, and their video games are really fun to play. However, what I'm not a big fan of is what happened with Skylanders in Japan. With a video game that was so universal and so well beloved by both kids and adults alike, one would think that it would absolutely do gangbusters in Japan. Exactly the same thing that Pokemon, Digimon, all those different kinds of games with the cute, kid-friendly characters and fun platforming at levels had. But as a matter of fact, Skylanders was a complete failure. When I first learned that Skylanders came out in Japan, I was so excited. I wanted to get all my different favorite Skylanders from every single game. I wanted to get them in a Japanese box because who doesn't want that for their collection? However, to my shock and dismay, I found out that only Spyro's Adventure came out in Japan. And not only that, it came out 2 years after the fact that we got it. What happened with Skylanders in Japan is not only a demonstration of how not to treat an international audience, it's also a great lesson to learn of when you're trying to penetrate into different markets and you're trying to bring a domestic product into an international market, how you can best avoid klutzing it up like Activision did. So, here's No Longer My Face. Here's some Japanese gameplay of Spyro's Adventure, and we're going to talk about why Spyro's Adventure and Skylanders as a whole did so poorly in Japan. Now, as all things in this world, this can mainly be boiled down to 3 reasons: timing, price, and support. The biggest of these 3, though, was easily timing. Japan didn't receive their copy of Skylanders Spyro's Adventure until July 12th of 2013, even though it originally launched internationally in October of 2011. Not only was it released almost 2 years after the fact, it was almost exclusively released on the Wii U in Japan, which is by far one of Nintendo's worst-selling consoles. Meanwhile, in the rest of the world, more confoundingly Australia, which normally shares a lot of distribution paths as Japan would, Skylanders Giants had already been out for almost a full year since October of 2012, and Skylanders Swap Force was only 3 months away, which was also being prepared to be ported onto new-gen consoles like the Xbox One and the PS4. The best way I can summarize it is that Japan wasn't even given a ticket to get onto the hype train that was Skylanders. By the time that Japan had finally gotten their hands on Skylanders, the franchise was already rapidly approaching their peak when sales were high and engagement was super high, and their view in the zeitgeist in the culture was already at a peak for Swap Force. And one thing can be said, that if Activision had put in a little bit more, or if support was better, I could maybe give them a bit more of a pass and expect and understand that they didn't want to sink any more money into this. However, Skylanders in Japan was set up to fail. Now, calling their distribution model terrible would be an incredible understatement. Famitsu, who is one of the primary retailers in Japan, released data that said that Skylanders were only sold through very exclusive boutique stores in Toys R Us and Babies R Us. And while as we, as Americans and Canadians and a few of the fellow Brits in the audience may acknowledge that maybe Toys R Us's were more common here, if you weren't in a massive city like Tokyo, Osaka, or Kyoto, you're not going to be able to find Skylanders readily available. The only ways to acquire these were either at these stores or through the online retailers. In any convenience store, any game store, any electronics store, you weren't able to buy Skylanders there. They were largely absent from ordinary department stores and video game retailers where Japanese families would normally encounter new releases for other video games. In addition to a terrible distribution model, the starter pack for Spyro's Adventure would retail for almost 7,000 yen, which, adjusting for US dollars and today's inflation, is more than $100. So now, not only is Activision demanding that you go out and buy a $500 console, they're demanding you pay almost $100 just to play the game. So you don't have a $100 cost, you have a $600 cost just to be able to play the game. Not only just to play the game, but you also have to go out and buy all the new figures and buy the expansion packs, which adds up rapidly with their prices. And while the 3DS version did get a release, it still required a different portal and you to have all those different Skylanders with it there too. And let's be honest, the 3DS games aren't real Skylanders games. The story's fun, the story's great and everything, but my hot take of the video is 3DS games aren't real. So adding it up, it's hard to get, it's expensive, and it also kind of felt like a reduced product to Japanese consumers. Not only did it not help with the translation of characters' nicknames, or the Skylanders website was translated into Japanese, it was all in English and generated through artificial intelligence to translate into Japanese. And lastly, Square Enix, the company responsible for porting the games into Japan, later announced that the promised secret code content for Japanese consumers had been canceled because Activision hates everyone. And if everything hasn't been bad enough, the real salt in the wound is there was no sustained follow-up. They didn't get most Skylanders that came out in later waves like the rest of the world did. Square Enix's Japanese support page explicitly said that there were no plans to release Skylanders Giants, at least in many of the community's opinion, the best Skylanders game and the most complete Skylanders game. They had no plans of releasing it in Japan. So without sequels, without continuing figure waves, no advertisement, no grassroots attempts to grow a player base or a community, the entire Japanese community really just became a one-off experiment rather than a franchise. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it just felt like another quick cash grab in a consumer base that loves video games, but Activision saw them as just another group to exploit. While I personally don't view competition from other games as a massive factor in this, with the limited character designs and the really no applicability, it made a breeding ground for games with more recognizable IPs like Disney Infinity and Nintendo's Amiibo to do gangbusters in Japan and suffocate Skylanders out of their markets. All the Disney Infinity games saw more than 10 million copies sold in Japan. Meanwhile, almost every single amiibo, especially the Splatoon related amiibo, outsold any single Skylander there. Skylanders just simply entered Japan with an outdated game, weak retail availability, and no long-term commitment to bringing this franchise to Japanese consumers and Japanese gamers. If I can summarize it one way, and excuse my French here, Activision and Square Enix just brought a shitty port of Skylanders Spyro's Adventure into Japan 2 years too late and made it so costly and so prohibitively restrictive that there was no way that game was going to succeed in Japan. Now, summarizing this whole video into a couple sentences is kind of difficult, and I'd love to talk about this more, but I'd like to make this a little digestible. So what I'll say is this: Skylanders wasn't failed by the Japanese consumer and the Japanese gamer. They didn't reject the idea, and all things considered, it had a pretty good impact in Japan for that small community, that small dedicated community that played it. It failed because of Activision. It failed because of Square Enix. It failed because the franchise arrived too late, too expensive, and treated like an afterthought. And Japan was never really given a true chance to embrace it. Skylanders wasn't defeated by the Japanese market. It was defeated by itself. If you like this video analysis, and if you like the gameplay, I know I'm not the best Skylanders game player, give it a subscribe, comment your thoughts below and how you think Skylanders should have been handled in Asian markets. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Join the Discord, it's linked in below, and I will make sure that I'm better at posting more quality videos. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic evening.